Before we step back into one of the most haunting missing person cases ever to come out of the American South, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you can, drop a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is on your clock right now. It means more than you know, because stories like this one only survive when people keep telling them. And trust me, this is a story about two sisters, one stolen life, one survivor, and a mother who refused to let the world forget. So settle in, turn the lights down, and let me take you back to a Thursday afternoon in 2004, when two 15-year-old twins walked out of a gas station, got into a car, and vanished off the face of the earth. They were 15, but they carried themselves like women twice their age. Not because they wanted to, but because life in Jennings homes, one of the rougher pockets of Augusta, Georgia, had never given them the luxury of being children for long. Janelle and Jaleesa Morgan were twins, though not identical. Janelle was the quiet one, the watcher, the girl who hummed to herself while she did her homework and noticed everything. Jaleesa was the loud one, the bold one, the one who danced in front of the mirror when she thought nobody was looking and talked her way out of trouble with a grin. They weren't the same face, but they shared the same bond, the kind of closeness that only comes from growing up side by side on a squeaky twin mattress, trading secrets in the dark, learning early that nobody was coming to save them, so they had to save each other. Where you saw Janelle, you saw Jaleesa. That was the rule. That had always been the rule. On the afternoon of March 18, 2004, the twins left Murphy Middle School the way they always did, cutting through Olive Road, walking down 12th Street, heads close together, laughing about something nobody else would ever hear. They were headed to their cousin Tasha's apartment because Tasha had cable and frozen pizza, and the girls were hooked on 106 and Park. They stayed longer than they should have. The sun started to slip low, painting the sidewalks in that amber light that only exists for a few minutes before dusk, and the streetlights hadn't come on yet. Their mother, Vanessa Morgan, would be home from her shift soon, and she expected them at the table. The girls gathered their things, said their goodbyes, and on the way out they stopped at their older sister Nia's apartment, just a few doors down, hoping she would walk them back to Jennings. Nia was in the middle of doing her baby's hair and couldn't go. They asked Tasha to walk them instead. Tasha was too tired. The twins shrugged it off. They had walked this route 100 times. It was less than a mile. They knew every crack in the pavement, every porch, every dog that barked and everyone that didn't. They always stuck together. That was the rule. Their last stop before heading home was the Pump and Shop gas station on 12th Street, their favorite spot, the place where the man behind the counter knew them by name and always asked about their grades. Jaleesa grabbed a bag of hot fries. Janelle picked a grape soda, her favorite, the purple kind she had loved since she was small. They paid in crumpled singles, said thank you, and walked out the door. The store's security camera caught them leaving at 6:42 in the evening, two girls in sneakers, laughing, carrying snacks, entirely unaware that this was the last frame of footage anyone would ever have of them alive. And then it happened. A white Ford sedan rolled into the lot at the exact moment the girls were stepping off the curb. The camera caught the car slowing, the passenger window sliding down, the girls hesitating, glancing at each other the way twins do when they're having a silent conversation, and then Jaleesa leaning in to talk to whoever was behind the wheel. Janelle stood close, her back to the camera. After a brief pause, the back door opened. The girls got in. The sedan pulled away calmly, smoothly, like it was just another ride home in a city where everybody knows everybody. That was the last time anyone saw Janelle and Jaleesa Morgan. Back at the apartment, Vanessa Morgan came home from her shift at Magnolia Ridge Nursing Home at 7:30, feet aching, scrubs smelling faintly of disinfectant and cocoa butter, expecting to find her daughters inside, maybe arguing over the remote or fighting about who left the bathroom light on. Instead, the apartment was silent. The beds were untouched. The air was too still, the kind of stillness a mother recognizes before her mind will admit what it means. At first, she told herself they were just running late, that they'd gotten caught up at Nia's. But when she called and Nia said the girls had left hours ago, something twisted hard in her chest. Vanessa started calling around. Cousins, friends, the school. Nobody had seen them. She grabbed her coat and walked the entire route herself, from Jennings' homes to the Pump and Shop and back, scanning every sidewalk, every bush, every alley, calling their names into the dark while people watched her from their porches, some concerned, some confused, some just tired of hearing about trouble. By 10 o'clock that night, she was standing at the front desk of the Richmond County Sheriff's Department, filling out a missing persons report with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The officer taking the report was a young man with a buzz cut and a clipboard who scribbled while she talked. 15-year-old girls, twins, last seen at the gas station, no history of running away, straight students who didn't go places without permission. Vanessa's voice cracked on that last part. He looked up, nodded, and said the thing she knew he would say. They're probably just blowing off steam. Teenagers do that. They're not like that, Vanessa replied. My girls don't run. He said they'd keep an eye out, and he was already moving on to the next call before she reached the door. Vanessa left the station feeling what she would feel for the next 20 years. That nobody was coming. The next morning, she went back to the pump and shopped with a flyer she'd made on her old computer. Photocopied until the girls' faces were starting to blur. The clerk recognized them instantly. He'd seen them the night before, he said. Bought chips and a soda. Seemed fine. She begged him to check the footage. He agreed. She watched the tape with trembling hands, and there they were, her babies, laughing, talking, walking out the door, and then the white sedan, the window, the pause, the back door, and then nothing. She screamed when she saw them get in. The police took the footage, but no Amber Alert was issued. They said it didn't meet the criteria. There was no proof of abduction. Maybe the girls had just taken a ride with someone they trusted. Maybe they'd come back. Vanessa knew better. She didn't sleep that night or the night after. She sat at the kitchen table staring at the door, and the door stayed shut. 2 days after the twins vanished, a hunter named Lester Caldwell was walking a wooded trail just past the edge of Richmond County. A stretch of land mostly ignored, overgrown with kudzu, used more by deer than by people. He wasn't looking for anything but tracks, maybe a squirrel nest. But when he reached a clearing near a forgotten dirt road, he spotted something odd tucked beneath a patch of pine needles and leaves. A white Ford sedan, parked still, almost perfectly camouflaged by time and brush. At first he thought it might be stolen or dumped. He stepped closer. The doors were unlocked. The interior smelled stale, like damp clothes and rust. The keys were still in the ignition. There was no blood, no sign of a struggle. But there was something else. 2 school backpacks sat side by side in the back seat, one pink, one navy. Inside the pink bag was a spiral notebook with Janelle Morgan written in blocky handwriting on the front, a math worksheet folded inside, half complete. The navy bag held a worn denim jacket, a Hello Kitty pencil case, and a travel-size bottle of pink body spray. In the cup holder was an open bottle of grape soda, half full. The hunter stepped back, heart pounding, and called the police. Within hours, deputies arrived with crime scene techs. Yellow tape went up between the trees. Flashing lights lit the tree line. And suddenly, the investigation everyone had shrugged off became real. The white Ford was traced to Raymond Pike, a former neighbor of Vanessa Morgan. He hadn't lived in Augusta for years, but older residents remembered him well. A quiet man, always polite, the kind who helped older folks carry their groceries. He used to drive Vanessa to her clinic appointments when the girls were little. That was before he suddenly left town in 1998 with no explanation. The moment Vanessa heard the name Pike, she collapsed in her living room. She remembered him, of course she did. The man who used to wave at her girls from his porch. The man who had once given them popsicles in the summer. The man she had told to stop being so friendly when Jaleesa came home and said he smelled weird. Now his car had been found abandoned in the woods with their belongings inside. But Pike was nowhere to be found. Detective Celeste Ward, still in her early years with the department back then, remembered the way the case shifted. One day it was a low-priority missing persons file about teenage runaways. The next it was something different, something colder. The discovery of the car didn't just confirm that something had happened to the girls. Proved they hadn't left on their own. They had been in that vehicle. They had been with someone they were made to trust. And then they were gone. Yet still, no Amber Alert was issued. The department cited jurisdictional issues, the delay in locating the vehicle, the lack of a confirmed abduction. It was policy, they said, not neglect. But to Vanessa it was clear. They had made a decision the moment she walked through those doors 2 days earlier. Her daughters were black, from public housing, raised by a single mother. They didn't see a case. They saw a statistic. In the following weeks, volunteers canvassed neighborhoods, knocked on doors, and scoured the woods near where the car was found. A few people came forward with vague stories. Someone said they saw a car like that outside a convenience store a week before. Another woman claimed she saw the girls in a different part of town 2 days after they went missing. None of the leads went anywhere. The bags were dusted for prints. None matched anyone outside the household. The grape soda bottle had partials, but they were smudged. Detectives couldn't determine whether the girls had been forced into the car or had gotten in willingly. All they knew was that the bags hadn't been tossed. They had been placed like someone meant for them to be found, or like someone had left in a hurry. Media interest faded quickly. A few local stations ran short segments. One news anchor mispronounced Jalisa's name. Another broadcast used the wrong photos. A city council member promised resources, then nothing. By the third week, most of the flyers had peeled from the telephone poles or been washed away by spring rain. Inside the Morgan home, time moved differently. Vanessa spent her mornings sitting on the porch watching every car that passed. She talked to neighbors who offered kind words and casseroles. She paced the hallway at night, listening for footsteps that never came. She still made the girls' favorite dinner on Thursdays, baked chicken with boxed mac and cheese and canned peaches on the side. She left the porch light on every night. The girls' room remained untouched, posters on the walls, shoes lined up beneath the bed. Vanessa stopped sleeping in her room and started sleeping on the couch beside the window, just in case someone knocked. Detective Ward continued to push the case quietly from her desk. She wasn't in charge, but she filed internal notes, requested access to nearby counties' missing persons lists, and kept the Morgan twins' names on her case board. She didn't have the authority to do much, but she had a feeling. Something about Pike didn't sit right. A background check showed he'd left Augusta for Florida in 1998, but after that the paper trail ended. No job records, no recent address, no license renewals. It was like he had disappeared before the girls even did. Vanessa believed he came back. She said it in every interview, every prayer circle, every church basement vigil. He came back and no one noticed. He came back and took her babies. But she had no proof, just a mother's gut and the weight of silence. When spring turned to summer, the search parties shrank from dozens to 3 to none. When the school year began again, no teachers stood up to ask where Janelle and Jalisa were. The case file was moved to a different drawer. No charges were filed. No arrests were made. No progress. Just 2 missing girls and a car full of ghosts. By the time summer bled into fall, the names Janelle and Jalisa Morgan had all but disappeared from the headlines in Augusta. What little attention the case had drawn fizzled without answers. The white Ford sedan sat in an evidence lot behind the sheriff's department, weather-worn and tagged, waiting for charges that never came. Pike's name slipped out of law enforcement's mouth like vapor. No arrest, no statement, no press conference, just the same sentence repeated in every response. The investigation is ongoing. But it didn't feel ongoing to Vanessa. It felt like being buried alive. She watched the weeks turn into months. The media crews that had once parked outside her building stopped calling. The reporters with notepads and microphones moved on to brighter stories, ones with resolutions. No one wanted to talk about 2 black girls from a poor neighborhood with no new leads. Vanessa still talked about them. She talked to anyone who would listen. She visited every church in Richmond County and beyond, stood up in community forums and town halls, passed out homemade flyers with photocopied school pictures that were starting to blur from being copied too many times. She wore one of the girls' necklaces every day, one with a tiny planet charm Janelle had loved, and the other with a small gold cross Jalisa got for her 13th birthday. She would wear both until the day they came home. She also kept the girls' room exactly as it had been on the day they vanished. 2 twin beds with cartoon sheets and stuffed animals arranged just so. School papers still tacked to the wall. A chore chart Jalisa had half filled out in pink marker. Their shoes lined up neatly beneath the window. It wasn't a shrine. It was a space held open. A signal to the universe that she believed, not hoped, believed, that they would return. But belief can feel like madness when the world forgets. By March of 2005, 1 year after the twins disappeared, Vanessa stood alone outside the sheriff's office holding a candle in a plastic cup. No cameras, no press, just her. She lit 2 candles and placed them on the concrete steps, one for Janelle, one for Jalisa. When the wind blew them out, she lit them again and again until someone inside told her to leave. Later that same month, the Richmond County Sheriff's Department quietly closed the case. They didn't announce it. They just refiled the paperwork and marked the status as inactive due to lack of evidence. A clerical decision Vanessa wouldn't learn about for months. When she found out, she went to the station in person, marched up to the front desk, and asked if it was true. The officer on duty gave her a tired look and said it wasn't personal. They just didn't have anything else to go on. Vanessa said they never looked hard enough. He didn't respond. Outside the station, she crumpled into herself. A stranger passing by tried to help, but she waved them off. Her grief didn't want sympathy. It wanted justice. By 2006, no one was talking about the Morgan twins anymore. Not on the news, not at the school board, not even in Jennings' homes, where children had started asking why their names weren't on the memorial wall outside the rec center. Vanessa still walked to the pump and shop every week like a ritual. She'd stand outside the gas station for a few minutes, look down the street where the sedan had once pulled up, and whisper her daughter's names like a prayer. Detective Ward hadn't stopped thinking about them either. She wasn't assigned to the case anymore, but she kept a copy of the girls' missing posters pinned to her cubicle wall. Some days she'd catch herself staring at them when she should have been working on current cases. She filed quiet requests for federal help, searched through cold case databases, looked for connections. But without witnesses, without Pike, without bodies, there wasn't much she could legally do. Still, she kept them close. One day in late 2007, while reorganizing evidence files, she pulled the Morgan case folder again just to look. The photos were yellowing now. The tape on the edges of the manila folder was beginning to peel. Inside, she found her own notes scribbled in the margins, questions she had asked herself over and over. Why would Pike come back after leaving Augusta in 1998? Did he have help? Was this the first time he had done something like this, or just the first time someone noticed? The more she read, the more hollow it felt. The case had been filed away as if closure were a formality. But closure requires answers, and no one had given Vanessa a single one. By 2010, Vanessa's hair had started to gray. She walked slower, spoke softer. But every time she told the story at church, at candlelight vigils, or to strangers who were willing to listen, her voice never cracked. My girls didn't run away. They were taken. And someone knows what happened. The city moved on without them. New developments rose across downtown. The old school buildings were torn down or renamed. The Jennings Homes complex went through renovations. The pump and shop changed owners. A generation of people grew up not knowing who Janelle and Jaleesa were. But Vanessa knew. She knew what time they were born, what each of them was afraid of, which one had the mole behind her left ear, which one always double-knotted her shoelaces. She knew how Jaleesa danced in the mirror when she thought no one was watching, and how Janelle used to hum while doing homework. She knew they hadn't left on their own, even if no one else believed it anymore. March 18, 2024. 20 years to the day since Janelle and Jaleesa vanished from 12th Street. It was a Monday, the kind of overcast spring day where the sky looked like wet cotton, stretched and heavy. Vanessa didn't bake a cake that morning. For the first time in 20 years, she hadn't lit a candle or put up new flyers. She sat at the kitchen table with the light off, hands folded over her lap, waiting for the coffee to finish dripping. She had no intention of doing anything special. Not this year. This year, the silence felt heavier than hope. Then the phone rang. It was a South Carolina number she didn't recognize. Her first instinct was to let it go to voicemail, but something nudged her, something deep and sharp and impossible to name. She picked up. Is this Vanessa Morgan? Yes. I believe we have your daughter. Vanessa didn't speak. She couldn't. She just stood there in the kitchen with the receiver pressed against her ear and her knees threatening to give out. A woman had been found walking barefoot along the shoulder of a highway just outside Sumter, South Carolina. No phone, no wallet, just a folded photo in her pocket, water-stained and faded, showing two black teenage girls smiling in school uniforms. A nurse at the small rural hospital where she was taken noticed the photo and the resemblance. The woman had barely spoken. When asked her name, she'd only said one word: Janelle. Vanessa dropped the phone. The next few hours moved like water in a broken pipe, rushing and leaking in every direction. She drove with her niece across the state line, white-knuckled and shaking, her heart hitting her ribs so hard she thought it would crack. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She didn't know what she was about to walk into. When she arrived at the hospital, they asked her to wait outside the room for a moment. A doctor stepped out and spoke softly. "She's extremely malnourished. We're running blood panels and trauma assessments. Mentally, she's alert, but she's been through something we don't fully understand yet." Vanessa barely heard the words. She pushed the door open before the doctor could finish. The woman in the hospital bed looked nothing like her baby girl, but it was her. Janelle was thin, too thin. Her face was hollow, her hair short and uneven, like it had been cut without care. Her skin was dry, her lips cracked, her knuckles bruised. But her eyes were the same. The moment Janelle looked up, her lip trembled. "Mama!" Vanessa didn't cry. She collapsed into the chair beside the bed and touched Janelle's hand like she was touching a ghost. Janelle squeezed it weakly, like she was afraid her mother might disappear if she didn't hold on. That first day, she said almost nothing. She slept. She blinked at the ceiling. She let nurses clean her up and check her vitals. When they asked what had happened, she turned away. When a social worker tried to get her to talk about the last 20 years, she shut down. But on the second day, when a nurse brought her oatmeal and orange juice and sat quietly by her side, Janelle spoke without being asked. She didn't make it out. That's all she said. Detective Celeste Ward received the call later that afternoon. She had retired 2 years prior, but her phone still rang every time a cold case stirred. When she heard the name Janelle Morgan, her hands went cold. She canceled her plans and made the 3-hour drive herself. When she entered the hospital room and saw the woman sitting upright, hands trembling in her lap, she nearly cried. Janelle didn't recognize her, but Celeste knew her in an instant. "We've been waiting for you," she said softly. Janelle nodded. Over the next few days, a trauma specialist was brought in to help Janelle begin sorting memory from silence. The truth didn't come out in a straight line. It came in fragments, in whispers, in drawings and nightmares. She remembered a house, a basement, a locked door, Jalisa crying at night, a man's voice, the sound of a chain. She remembered Jalisa planning, whispering about how they could escape, about what she would do once they got free. Janelle remembered being too afraid. She remembered the night Jalisa tried, the slam of the door, a scream, then silence. After that, she never saw her sister again. The man moved Janelle to a different place, then another. He changed her name, told her nobody was looking for her, told her Jalisa was dead, told her if she ran, she'd end up in a ditch too. For a long time, she believed him. She lived in trailers, in cabins, in empty houses that smelled like mildew and bleach. She worked in kitchens and gas stations under fake names. A woman eventually took her in and gave her a room. That woman died last year. That was when Janelle ran. She walked for days, slept in woods, ate from dumpsters, didn't speak to anyone. When she reached the highway near Sumter, she just kept walking until her legs gave out. When she collapsed, someone called 911. That was how she was found. She had nothing but the photo of her and Jalisa from their last school year. DNA tests confirmed it was her. Her fingerprints matched the old school records. Everything aligned. But Jalisa was still gone. That night, Vanessa sat beside her daughter's bed, holding both of her hands and whispering the names of all the family members who never stopped praying. She pulled out the last birthday cake photo she had taken, a cake with both girls' names and 2 candles lit. She pressed her forehead to Janelle's and said, "You came back. That's all I ever wanted." Janelle didn't respond. She stared out the window at the night sky and, for the first time in 20 years, let herself wonder if Jalisa might still be out there too. Janelle Morgan didn't speak all at once. The story of what happened came out in pieces, stitched together through interviews, therapy sessions, and late-night whispering between mother and daughter. It wasn't the kind of story that had a beginning, middle, and end. It was a storm she'd been trapped inside for 2 decades, and now she was crawling through the wreckage barefoot, trying to explain the wind. After the ride from the pump and shop that night, she and Jalisa weren't taken far. Janelle remembered the turns, the stop sign, the sound of gravel under tires. The house was outside Augusta, somewhere deep in the woods, past a narrow dirt road. It looked normal on the outside, but the inside was hollow. The living room had no furniture, the kitchen had no fridge, and the basement door was padlocked from the outside. That's where they were kept. There was a single mattress on the floor, a bucket, a small table with an old lamp that buzzed when it was on. Pike didn't speak much. He came down with food, cans of beans, crackers, juice boxes. He never let them out at the same time. He watched them, always from the top of the stairs, always with something in his hand. Janelle would cry herself to sleep some nights. Jaleesa wouldn't. She'd talk, whisper plans, count the days, trace escape routes on the concrete wall with her finger. She told Janelle they would get out, that they just needed to wait for the right moment. One night, the lock jammed. Pike struggled with it. The door creaked open for just a second too long. Jaleesa ran. Janelle was too afraid. She didn't move. She heard footsteps above. A struggle, a slam, a scream, and then nothing. When Pike came back, he was covered in mud and breathing hard. He didn't say a word. He just stared at Janelle like she'd made the mistake. The next morning, she was moved. He told her Jaleesa was gone. She asked what that meant. He said, "You don't want to know." She never saw her sister again. Over the next few years, Janelle was shuffled like a secret. Sometimes she lived in trailers with broken windows. Sometimes in small houses that smelled like mold. Once in the back of a church used for revival meetings. He gave her fake names, told her to never speak unless someone spoke to her, told her if she ever tried to run, she'd end up like Jaleesa. She obeyed. She stopped asking questions. She stopped saying her real name. And after a while, she started to believe that maybe Jaleesa really was gone. Maybe no one was looking for her. Maybe Pike was right. He had helped too. Not many, but a few people along the way looked the other way. A woman in Alabama let them stay in her back room. A man in Tennessee gave Pike a job fixing roofs and never asked about the teenage girl in the car. People assumed she was a cousin or a daughter or someone else's problem. No one asked. No one noticed. By the time Janelle turned 17, Pike stopped moving her. He left her with a woman named Charlene in South Carolina. Charlene was kind but distant. She was told Janelle was a runaway. She gave her a room, clothes, a new ID. Janelle started going by Kayla. She worked at a convenience store, stocked shelves, swept floors. She didn't speak much, didn't smile much either. She stayed with Charlene for almost 10 years. And then Charlene got sick. And when she passed, Janelle was alone for the first time in her adult life. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to start over. But she knew she couldn't stay. So she packed a bag, took the photo she had kept hidden all those years, folded tight in a Bible behind a page with her sister's favorite verse. She walked to the highway and started walking. She didn't have a plan. She didn't even know where she was going. But her feet carried her toward something she thought she'd lost. Freedom. The investigation, once reopened, unraveled quickly. Detective Ward worked with the FBI and neighboring jurisdictions to track Pike's old aliases. They found a trail of false IDs, odd rental agreements, and off-the-grid job records. The big break came when a fingerprint from the original white Ford sedan, preserved in the evidence archives, matched a recent application Pike had submitted for a construction contract in Florida. He was living under the name Harold Simmons in Panama City, working as a private security contractor. He had a small house, no known wife, no children. When they knocked on his door, he didn't run. He didn't argue. He just stood there with a strange blankness in his eyes. They brought him in. He said nothing, but the evidence spoke for him. Inside his Florida home, they found a box of old items. Receipts, keys, a children's necklace with a planet charm, an envelope with clippings from the Augusta Chronicle's early coverage of the missing girls. DNA pulled from the original vehicle's carpet, once considered inconclusive, was now tested with new techniques and confirmed to contain material matching both Janelle and Jaleesa. Pike was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and obstruction of justice. The media exploded. For the first time in 20 years, Janelle and Jaleesa's names were on every screen. But it wasn't closure because Jaleesa had never come back. The trial was scheduled for late summer. Cameras crowded the courthouse steps. News vans from Atlanta and Columbia and even a crew from New York parked along the street, broadcasting updates on what was now being called one of the longest unresolved child abduction cases in Georgia history. People who had once looked past the missing flyers now asked to volunteer. Reporters who had never covered the original case stood in front of murals they didn't know existed, nodding into cameras with solemn faces. They said the city was shaken. They said justice was near. But Janelle Morgan didn't care about any of that. She testified behind closed doors. The courtroom was sealed. The media was barred. No cameras, no sketches, just her voice, her mother beside her, and the man who had taken everything from them sitting silent in a chair across the room. She didn't look at him, not once. She told the story, what she remembered, what she survived, what she lost. She spoke slowly, not for drama, but because her words had been buried so long it took effort to dig them out. When she spoke Jalisa's name, her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. When it was over, she stood, walked out of the courtroom, and didn't look back. Pike's attorney attempted to file for psychiatric review, claimed memory gaps, claimed mistaken identity. But the DNA, the fingerprints, the physical evidence, and Janelle's testimony held. He was denied bail and held on multiple counts, with more charges pending from surrounding states. Still, there was no murder charge without a body. The DA said they couldn't proceed with a homicide case. So Jalisa remained missing in the eyes of the law, officially, legally. But not to Janelle and not to Vanessa. She knew the way a mother always knows. A month after the trial began, the city of Augusta voted to approve the construction of a new memorial garden in the heart of the Jennings Homes redevelopment. It would sit where the old playground used to be, right between the basketball court and the community center. The garden would feature native Georgia flowers, a bench for quiet reflection, and a sculpture of two young girls walking hand in hand. But Vanessa didn't wait for that. On the 20th anniversary of their disappearance, she and Janelle returned to the place where the white sedan had been found, just beyond a tree line off that narrow Richmond County trail, now overgrown but still marked with yellow police tape hanging limp like forgotten ribbon. They stood in silence. Vanessa knelt and laid a single purple hoodie on the forest floor. It had once belonged to Jalisa. She had fought to get it back from the evidence locker after Pike was arrested. It still smelled like plastic and dust and something she couldn't name, something hollow. Janelle held a candle in one hand. In the other, a laminated copy of the school photo they'd taken just weeks before they disappeared. She had trimmed it, cleaned the edges. The smile on Jalisa's face looked younger now, frozen in time. She lit the candle, set it down beside the hoodie, and watched the flame flicker against the wind. Then she whispered, "You didn't make it out, but I did, and I'll carry both of us now." That evening, as the sun dropped below the pine trees and the shadows stretched long across the street where they used to walk, Vanessa sat on the porch of her apartment with a tray of candles. She had invited no one, made no flyers, just her and her daughter and a table full of light. Janelle lit each one, for Jalisa, for the girls who never made it home, for the mothers still waiting. When the last candle was lit, Janelle sat down beside her mother. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. 20 years had been stolen from them. But that night, quiet, warm, soft with memory, they took something back. Weeks later, a mural appeared near the corner of 12th Street and MLK Boulevard. No one claimed it. No one painted it in daylight. But one morning, it was just there. It showed two girls with braids walking through a door of stars. One looked back. One kept walking. At the bottom, in small white paint, were the words, "Still twins, even now." It took months before Janelle called her mama again. Not because she didn't want to, but because the word felt too big, too sacred to be said lightly. She tested it one afternoon in the backyard while watching her mother clip laundry to a line. The sun warmed his face as she whispered it under her breath. "Mama." Vanessa turned slow and stunned, and Janelle smiled, small, shaky, but real. That night, Vanessa didn't sleep. She just sat in her room holding the baby shoes Janelle had once worn, as if saying the word out loud had finally broken the last chain she'd been carrying. Janelle began therapy soon after. The state offered support, but most of what she needed couldn't come from doctors. Came in pieces, watching reruns of shows she used to love, smelling scents that once made her feel safe, learning how to laugh again without feeling guilty. Vanessa caught her one morning dancing barely, just a sway to an old record playing Al Green. Janelle didn't notice she was watching, and Vanessa didn't interrupt. She just stood in the hallway with her hand over her heart, smiling through tears. They were healing slowly together, but not everyone was. Of the 34 adults recovered from the compound, wait, no, that was a different story. This story had no compound. It had a basement, a locked door, a chain, and a man who had stolen two girls and scattered one of them across 2 decades of fear. Some of the people who had looked the other way were gone now. Pike would face what was left of the law's reach. But Jalisa was still out there somewhere, in a ditch in the woods, in a grave that had never been marked, and no charge could bring her home. One crisp October morning, Janelle and Vanessa returned to the field behind the old school route, to the tree line where the sedan had been found. The land had changed. New swings, new buildings, a repaved lot. But the old oak tree remained, the one the girls used to climb, the one Janelle had sworn talked to her. Janelle stood in front of it now, taller than her mother remembered, but in her eyes, for a moment, she looked 15 again. She knelt beside the tree and placed a photo of the two of them there, the same photo, the one from the last school year, the one with the smiles. "I never liked pictures before," she said quietly. "You were always camera shy." Vanessa smiled through tears. "I like this one now," Janelle said, "because it doesn't let him win. It's the proof." Then she placed a small stone at the base of the tree, smooth, painted with two names, Janelle, Jalisa, a memorial but not an ending. That weekend, Vanessa hosted a dinner at her home. Not just for Janelle, but for the nurse who had sat with her, for Detective Ward, for the cousin Tasha who had carried guilt for 20 years, for the clerk from the pump and shop who had pulled the tape. Everyone brought something: cornbread, flowers, pie baked by hand. Janelle brought a small wooden carving she had made in therapy, a replica of the white sedan, but with the doors open and two birds flying out of the windows. When everyone sat to eat, Vanessa stood to say grace, but her voice broke halfway through. She looked at the table, at all the people she never expected to see together. "Thank you," she said instead, tears falling freely now. "Just thank you for coming home." Janelle rose and placed her arm gently over her mother's shoulder. "You're the reason we made it back." The press moved on eventually. Other tragedies took over the headlines. But for those who lived through it, the aftershocks continued. Janelle and Vanessa started a small foundation in the girls' names, working with the police to push for faster Amber Alerts, for better handling of missing Black children, for casework that doesn't wait 2 days to believe a mother. They spoke at schools. They stood at vigils for other families still waiting. Janelle told her story again and again, not for sympathy, but so that the next girl who hesitates at a car window might remember to walk away. And every March 18th, without fail, they return to the tree line with 2 candles and a purple hoodie, and they say the names out loud. Janelle Morgan, Jalisa Morgan, still twins, even now, because a name said out loud is a kind of light, and light is the one thing the dark can never argue with. And if you're still here, if you made it to the end of the story, then you're part of keeping those names alive too. So do me that favor one more time. Subscribe, like, and share this with someone who needs to hear it, because somewhere out there, another mother is keeping a porch light on, and the least we can do is make sure the world keeps looking.